Steeler country. We are back with the one and only, the sick podcast, Steeler Crazy. I am Jay York Football. This is Mic'd Up Sports One. The Steeler season has obviously come to an end, but there is no off season on the sick podcast, Steeler Crazy. 365 days of Steeler coverage, and it's always great. We bring on reporters and guys just breaking it down in the off season. The Steelers got to do something. Mike, how are you today?
I'm good. You said it, man. 24/7, 365. Even in a leap year, we'll try and bring you 365 days of content. But yeah, it's going to be a good show today. Always happy to catch up with fantasy experts because they definitely recognize the value of certain individuals on a specific team. And a lot of Steelers could be ascending or descending. So this guy certainly will have a great idea in regard to what players are on the rise and who potentially are falling in not just fantasy, but the real world as well.
Yeah, and before we jump into it with our guy Ian, you got to shout out our partnership over at Stoney's Beer. Why settle for a run-of-the-mill, mass-produced beer when you can have the best? Upgrade your beer game, raise your standards, and taste the difference that Stoney's Beer can deliver. And like I always said, it's been delivering all season, more than the Steelers. So hopefully the 2024-2025 season will be a little bit better. We're going to get the playoff win, but we're going to get to our guests. And Mike, I see it on your shirt right there. Where the bar is set. Shout out to Steel City Wheelhouse, where the bar is set. Tires for all cars and trucks can now be purchased online at steelcitywheelhouse.com. And guess what? Financing is available. They have everything that you need there. Remote starters, winter tires. You want to get your windows tinted. You want to have specialty, any type of custom auto. Steel City Wheelhouse. Go see our guys, John and John, down there doing great things over at Steel City Wheelhouse. What do you say? Steeler Nation, let's talk some football and let's get to it. Mike, Sammy, Anello, ready for takeoff.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Steelers Crazy.
Aaron Smith shields. Flacco, Polamalu takes it home. Super Bowl 43. Pittsburgh might be bound for that thanks to number 43.
The sickest Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
All right, guys. You know the old saying, happy wife, happy life. Well, for me, it's happy fantasy team, happy fantasy life. If my teams are playing well, you're generally going to see me with a smile on my face. I wasn't smiling so much this past season, but we are smiling today because we have a senior fantasy analyst at Fantasy Life joining us today, formerly with PFF and NBC. It's none other than Ian Hartitz. Ian, what is going on? Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate you guys having me. And yeah, I can't agree enough with the happy fantasy team, happy life. In my case, I usually have about 20 teams. I got to, actually follow the start sits and set the rosters on Sunday. So at that point, I'll kind of keep tabs on my OG, home league with the college buddies and everything. But otherwise, guys, I'm more or less numb to everything happening out there. It's always good and bad for me at the same time. Usually try to check those final scores at the end of the day and hopefully come up more than we are down. But yeah, guys, sorry about the way the season ended for your Steelers. And again, all but one team ends up being unhappy at one point or another as we finish it off. But yeah, guys, appreciate you having me.
Definitely. Thanks for coming on, Mike.
Yeah, it's not your fault. If anybody's fault, it's PFF's. So don't we don't blame you one bit. No, I'm just kidding, of course. And I'm taking a stand on fantasy football next year. I've already decided. I think 8 teams over the past 2 years, and I've finally reached that age where I'm like, I can't even keep up with this myself. So that's how you know you're getting old, I guess, at some point. All right, 2 guys that probably didn't help any fantasy teams last year are Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett. Neither are going to have much fantasy value this year as well, I'm assuming. So I want to phrase this in a way where we'll find out who you think is better. If Pickett or Rudolph is the Steelers starting quarterback last year, who would you rather have, or this coming year, who would you rather have on your fantasy team?
God, we're still there, guys. We're not talking about the draft of free agents. Why is it between Muhammad and McLovin again here? So I will say Look, I mean, you guys are on Twitter. You guys see it. The most random backup quarterback has a decent game, and then we find out immediately it's better than anything Kenny Pickett has ever achieved out there. So I got to go with Rudolph because those last 4 games of the season, I understand he only had more than 30 pass attempts against the Bills. It was pure game manager mode there at the end. But you look up the stats, and I mean, it was like Flacco-esque in terms of, the EPA, the CPOE, the other advanced stats where if we, don't want to use PFF grades, these are the next best things we have. And they told us that Rudolph was legit operating as a top 10 QB during that time. So again, it wasn't being overly asked to do much, but I thought those final 4 games of the season, specifically the final 3 regular season games, were just simply better than anything we've seen from Pickett at this point with a lot of these young QBs. Think about Fields in his first year, Bryce Young this year. We have these wasted years with the quarterbacks on their rookie contracts where we just got to wonder like, okay, that was bad, but could they maybe do this with, more weapons around them? We don't have that question in Pittsburgh. You guys got Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, 2, at least 1, very good running backs. I think we could agree on Pat Freiermuth. Like, I'm not saying this is a top 5, overall offense in terms of the environment that either quarterback is walking into. But hey, when, I heard the rumors, not rumors, just the whispers about how things could not get any worse from moving on from, noodle armed late career big men. They did in a hurry. And the reason they did was Kenny Pickett at the end of the day. So I would go with Rudolph, but I would really hope we get some outside competition coming in, whether it be the draft or free agency, because I think at the end of the day, we've seen more than enough stars from both guys to probably realize not going to quite work out at a high enough level as Steelers fans need.
Do you think Justin Fields will be on the move? What would you do if you were the Bears with the number 1 pick in that situation?
Yeah, I think he should. I think they should probably go ahead and trade him. And it pains me. I am a longtime Columbus, Ohio lifer. I do believe Fields is a top, 20 quarterback in the NFL at this point. Just the mobility, the arm strength, like for better and for worse, he forces defenses to defend every square inch of the field. So you're always going to have just a higher overall upside, I think, with a quarterback like Fields. Not to keep throwing, strays at Kenny Pickett, but that's one of the problems there. Like, the dude can move. We all saw the fake slide moment a couple years ago. Josh Allen's out here trying to steal his flow and everything like that. But, I mean, the dude couldn't average even 4 rushing yards per game this season. Very confusing to me to just see him completely abandon kind of the off-script element into 2023. But with Fields, I would love to see Vegas just in terms of, the personality that team kind of has. We saw Fields enable DJ Moore to some new heights, so I'd feel pretty confident in Devontae Adams out there doing his thing. But at the end of the day, Chicago, as much as I do think Fields can be a good quarterback, I think what we've learned in terms of like the Giants paying Daniel Jones and even the second, Russell Wilson contract with the Broncos, like the worst thing you can do to set your team back is to overpay a quarterback who is not operating at a top 10 level. And the Bears are, only about 1 year away from having to make that decision with Justin Fields. So whether it's Caleb or Drake May, seemingly Caleb, Williams, based on everything we've heard. Not only drafting him does it give him a chance to have the better overall quarterback, but it resets that entire timeline they're on, gives them the chance of having a quarterback operating at an elite level on a rookie contract, and I think that's just too much to pass up.
We are joined by Ian Hartitz right here on the Sick Podcast. Steelers crazy. You see Fantasy Life right behind him. He's a senior fantasy analyst for them. All right, my last question before I kick it over to Jordan over there. You mentioned Justin Fields kind of underperformed expectations. What about one specific Steeler this past season that outperformed expectations?
Yeah, I mean, I would say just George Pickens. I did not think he had this entire just bagging him really with the routes and everything. And it is one of those problems where when you looked at him as his rookie wide receiver self, like just an overwhelming majority of his routes where it goes in slants. And it's just like, okay, well, he wasn't really asked to run these other routes. Does that mean he can't do it? Or does that mean he just wasn't asked to do it? And I think we saw, especially when Deontay was missing time earlier in the year, that Pickens can go out there and be your number 1 dog if that's what you need. I mean, just on the season, guys, 13th most receiving yards on the year, beating out guys like DK Metcalf, Chris Olave, Devontae Smith, Garrett Wilson, fellow players that I think we say are number 1 wide receivers, and we don't even really think twice about it. So Pickens versus Deontay Johnson has always been this, big argument in the fantasy circles. But honestly, I think both of these guys have proven capable of being that number 1. And when you combine them, yeah, that's even a better problem to have out here. So there's been some studies my former employer PFF has done talking about how passing games more than ever, once you get deep into the playoffs, it becomes a situation where defenses are good enough that they can take away your number 1 one. So really you need that number two, number three wide receivers to maybe not be quite as good. Let's face it, we can't all achieve that, but you can't have them just be some Jags running around. So I'd be more curious if they can surround Pickens and Deontay with an upgrade, or if just Calvin Austin can start developing more. So I know Allen Robinson, blocking, doing things like that, but let's face it, far cry from the guy we saw, making all sorts of plays in those 2017, 2018 years, and even before that with the Jaguars. So I'd be curious if they can get one more weapon maybe in this passing game and give him more of a speed dimension. But that said, Calvin Austin looked pretty good with his opportunities.
Yeah, well,
Jordan, I know you want to ask about a guy that we had on every week.
Yeah, well, we actually did produce the Jaylen Warren show and had him on here every week. So just a great guy, very humble, but his story and just what he contributed to the Steelers, I would say he was one of the most consistent. The running game in general, him and Najee were the two most consistent on the offensive side of the ball. Just touch on that, because my question was about George Pickens, but that kind of just can he be an elite wide receiver next year? I think the answer is yes, with a competent quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, he just was. Again, we never doubted the contested catch ability. My God, we see enough practice clips from it, and then he does it in the game as well. But again, I never knew he kind of had that, I wasn't familiar with his game Shaq meme there with being able to take those slants and just outrun some angles. So I do think it's a good reminder, too, that, when he was a rookie, obviously coming off that, I know he returned at the end of his season at Georgia and everything, but you got to remember with these guys, they're not always back to 100% 12 months after this devastating knee injury. I think we saw the best version of Pickens, obviously ever in 2023, and hopefully it just continues to get better and better. But Jaylen Warren would have been a great answer as well. I just think I was probably the wrong guy to ask, because I kid you not, guys, in the best ball underdog streets where you just draft a team and then it just, you don't have to do any player management on it. I did not draft anyone more than I drafted Jaylen Warren this past season. I was just very convinced that he was both a great running back, and as we've seen over the years, whether it was Le'Veon or, D'Angelo Williams or James Conner or now Najee Harris, Mike Tomlin has always been, he said it, he's a feature back kind of guy. So when I saw Jaylen Warren usually going in that late, kind of round 9, round 10 range, he got streamed up a little bit closer to August. But with Warren, it was okay, here's a guy who we saw last year was starting to take on more of the pass game work. So I thought there could be some flex appeal. But if anything happened to Najee, I just thought the ceiling was the roof there for Jaylen Warren. And the fact that Warren did all this without an injury to Najee happening was just so incredible, because I would have never expected him to meet value without, any sort of an injury occurring. So on the season, just, pick any advanced stat you want. Missed tackles for is just raw yards per carry, yards after contact per carry, explosive run play rate. They're all going to tell you Jaylen Warren was legit a top 3 running back. So on the one hand, Najee, had 8+ defenders in the box on 20% of his carries. For Warren, it was only 12%. So yes, I do think there was some of a short yardage element that makes it a little bit unfair to just overly compare yards per carry against them. But on the other hand, guys, I think when you put Jaylen Warren back there, it kind of forces defenses to approach the offense differently because of how dynamic he can be in both terms of ripping off those big runs and obviously catching the ball out of the backfield. So I will say last year, I thought it was a lot more understandable to kind of slander Najee and want more Jaylen Warren out there. We really saw the best version of Najee Harris this year, though. And honestly, they formed a pretty great 1-2 punch. So in fantasy land, we would always prefer just to get that one, featured CMC level running back, because more volume, more fantasy points for us. But in the year 2024, only so few bell cows left. We'll take those 2-back committees when we can get them. And the Steelers, low key, had a really, really productive one this year. Really did end up being almost like a, low to middle class man's version of the Lions, with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery.
Yeah, I think that the nickname that they gave him here in Pittsburgh, Thunder and Lightning. So it was great to see. It was there wasn't many positive this season. I mean, it was a season of ups and downs, but to take it away, if I had to sum it up, I would say the running game was definitely a bright spot, especially for fantasy owners and consistency wise. So before I throw it back over to Mike, you kind of talked about Pat Freiermuth too, obviously just battling injuries. Do you think it is, possible for him to bounce back? And then my question after that was, because you kind of touched on that, and do you think Deontay Johnson's stock is rising or falling?
So interesting. We have all these companies out there trying to give us their ratings and stuff. And I'm not saying that any of them are exactly right. I like to try to, look at a group of them to see what things are saying. But ESPN Analytics has this new receiver rating out this year. And I think mostly it's directionally correct. Their number 6 highest graded wide receiver this year was Deontay Johnson, and number 7 was George Pickens. I mean, the only guys ahead of them, Brandon Ayuk, AJ Brown, Nico Collins, CeeDee Lamb, and DJ Moore. So would I have ranked Deontay and Pickens top 7? No.
Ahead of Tyreek Hill?
Wow.
Tyreek Hill. Again, yeah, so we're seeing some holes already in the ratings. I get it. I don't think they're right from 1 to 120, but they really did some good things out there, particularly Deontay with his ability to get open so much. So I know that we just see the drops, and those are what stick out in our minds. But guess who led the drops? Guess who led the NFL in drops this year? Puka Nacua. And guess what? We don't care because of how many he caught and how much of drops just end up being more of a volume stat. So again, they're frustrating, but it's almost hard to get open and drop the ball as much as Deontay does in his own right. He's got a little bit of that Will Fuller to him at the end of the day. Would love to know where Will Fuller is these days, by the way. But overall, guys, I think that there's enough juice in the entire offense, including Pat Freiermuth, to, again, just give these quarterbacks, whoever it's going to be, enough weapons. I was just always confused with Freiermuth. He has that blow-up game against the Bengals. 120 yards. They came out afterwards and they were like, we know Cincy loves their 2 high coverages. This was a game plan, a schematic kind of move. And then, they play again a month later and he literally goose eggs across the board. So just, again, a weird offensive philosophy that honestly I didn't see get all that much better even once they got rid of Matt Canada. What happened to this whole idea that the Steelers were going to start embracing play action more once Big Ben got away from it? Because that was always the talk. And I get it. You're Big Ben, not moving as well as he used to by any stretch. You don't want to turn your back to the defense and be messing around with that. So I understand that from Big Ben. But guys, it's been a few years now. And when you just look at these numbers, it has not gotten better at all. In 2021, the Steelers were 31st in play action rate. Last year, they were 29th. And in 2023, they were 31st. It did not go up at all, even after Matt Canada was out of the picture. So when you look around the league, I mean, this is one of those things where the Lions were number 1 team in play action rate. You're going to see the Dolphins, the 49ers up there more years than not. It's a pretty easy tool, especially when paired with a strong run game like the Steelers, to make life easier on your quarterbacks and everyone involved. Whoever ends up calling plays for the Steelers in 2024, really hope they embrace that because it makes life a lot easier for everyone.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. If I had to come up with a theory, it would be lack of faith in the offensive line, which is steadily improving. Broderick Jones, Isaac Smalo picked up last year in free agency, is an absolute beast. So I think, hopefully they have more confidence in that unit moving forward and, can give Pickett and Rudolph a little bit more time back there if that is the potential duo coming back. And I think it says a lot that Deontay and Pickens are ranked 6th and 7th in that particular data sector, and still the quarterback play at the end of the day and the results were not very good, considering that that ESPN, I think it was, their metrics have them as 2 of the top receivers.
Deontay really did too, just like, I know you guys are watching all the games. I go out there and watch them all as well. I mean, I remember that Rudolph's first game against the Bengals when Pickens was going nuts, Deontay torches the dude, was open for a 70-yard tud. Rudolph had a rare miss on that. We had the other, that infamous play where, the fumble's rolling around, Deontay's not paying attention to it. The play before he catches a touchdown, Gene Steratore, the rules official, tells us it's a touchdown, and then the Steelers decide not to challenge it. I don't know if they would have overturned it anyway. This happened 3 times last season where the rules official said it was a catch and then the officials disagreed on the field. But again, I think with Deontay, it's he does so many good things, especially just the ease with which he can give his quarterback, some of those easy, curls and out routes. He really is. I know it's maybe a bad comp with what we've seen the last few days, but Deontay does have that Stephon Diggs to him, where even if he's not maybe the fastest single guy on the field or the tallest or the biggest, you just see him get open time and time again. So again, I know the low points stick out, but from a guy who didn't score a freaking touchdown all last season, really good to see him go out there and just prove that when you can put the ball in his general vicinity, good things are going to happen more times than not.
Yeah, you're not going to see Mike Tomlin's face in a history book ever next to successful challenges by NFL head coaches. I guess that's one way to put it. My last question before Jordan gets you out of here with a couple predictions is, I'm assuming you're a dynasty fantasy guy as well. I'm big time myself. Just talk briefly about some of this new class, some of the skill position players coming in from the draft that we should have our eyes on.
Yeah, just from everything I've been reading a little bit so far, I still got to get in the weeds more myself, but just seems like the year of wide receivers. And
Mhm.
I do wonder, like, how many straight years are we going to start saying this? And like, how long are we going to be able to keep paying these guys top dollar with so many freaking great wide receivers coming in one after another? But anytime you can see, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and then also Romeo Aduze from Washington, possibly 3 top 10 wide receivers, and a Brock Bowers who, has the potential to be used like a number one pass game option at the next level. I think we're going to see 3 to 4 guys like as rookies, honestly cracking into the top 50 fantasy picks almost immediately. So again, rare to see these sort of wide receivers that are just so great that you can almost throw them into any situation and expect immediate day one greatness. But at least in terms of Marv and Neighbors, I think that we are looking at that sort of thing. Does seem like a slightly weaker running back class than normal. Blake Corum, finally done killing my Buckeyes. Thank God, dude. Get the hell out of here already. But, he's going out there. Seems like he's earned, the number one overall, just running back ranking. And, hey, good for him with that. But even then, saw plenty of Donovan Edwards at Michigan. I don't think Corum was being, consistently featured in obviously what was a low-volume Wolverines passing attack in the first place. So I think, if anything, the running backs are going to be a lot more, what team are they going to land on? Because, hey, in fantasy, guys, like the whole idea that running backs don't matter, it comes down to the idea that you can just find these dudes on the waiver wire at the end of the season who turn out to be a Zonovan Knight or a Zamir White and just end up getting 20 touches somehow and giving you the fantasy points accordingly. So I think the running back group is going to be a bit more landing spot dependent, but between Bowers and some of those wide receivers, and then obviously the top 2 picks almost certainly being quarterbacks, a lot of rookies going to shake things up in a hurry. I'm excited.
Yeah, so before we get you out of here and you can tell everyone where we find you, just want to give a shout out to our partnership over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use DraftKings code 6sports to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5 on any NFL bet. But make sure you use our code 6sports. That's a great segue into what I'm going to ask you next, Ian, is who do you have in your Super Bowl? I'll give mine, and, I've been getting some things for it, but, everyone was going with the Bills. I have the 49ers Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and I have the 49ers winning. I'll just leave it at that. I know it's early, but there's mine.
Hey, I got the same one as you. I think the Chiefs.
Wow. I thought I was the only one that was.
No, man, I'm done betting against Patrick Mahomes. Not that I ever really started with it, but again, we see him as these small favorites. The dude's never freaking lost against the spread, I think, when he's been an underdog by like more than 3 points like he is this weekend. So, end of the day, getting that rematch, but it's just this Chiefs defense makes life so difficult on everybody. Still the only group in the NFL this year that hasn't allowed 30-plus points in any game this season. I know if there's any Ravens fans out there, I know it was a safety against the Rams that got them up to 31, but still, your team allowed 31 points. Chiefs still haven't done that. And honestly, just the way that offense looked, that was Mahomes' best performance against the Bills in terms of adjusted yards per attempt. He's healthy right now. We haven't gotten that in a lot of these past playoffs. And when he's healthy, the scrambling addition, the not taking sacks, and lo and behold, a couple wide receivers making plays other than Rashee Rice out there. So Kelsey, finally seemingly over the Butterfingers problem he had for a lot of the year. Ultimately, we've seen Purdy look very mortal, when he hasn't had Deebo Samuel out there, and against some of the league's better defenses, specifically the Ravens. I think the Chiefs qualify, and where's Mahomes versus Purdy? Give me the best quarterback in the game.
I like it. And tell everyone where they can find you. As always, we really, appreciate, someone like you coming on the show and breaking it down. I know our viewers are, will really appreciate that. And Mike, if you have anything to say, but thank you again, man. Just tell everyone where they can find you.
Appreciate you guys. Always, really admire and respect the true 365 grinders out there. So my fiance's dad is a big time Steelers fan. So truly feel for you guys.
Welcome.
Send him the link.
We'll take him anytime. We'll take him on the show.
For my own personal happiness in the upcoming years, I hope that the Steelers can continue to
we play the Cowboys next year. I've seen the schedule. I don't know if it's in Pittsburgh or Dallas, so I have to check.
Oh, man, gonna have to circle that one for sure. But yeah, guys, you can find me at Fantasy Life, Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life, our fearless leader. But we have a newsletter daily. It's free and everything like that. Everything on our website's free. loads of free stats, content throughout the year and, rankings and all that. So if you are into fantasy football, I know it can be tough trying to figure out the subscription you want and this and that. We got everything for you all for free $99. And we just like to have a good time talking some balls. So again, appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you, Ian. Keep up
Thanks,
the good
Ian.
work.
We love hearing free 99, don't we? I mean, if there's anything to perk the ears up, it's free 99. So I love fantasy football. Everybody is aware of that, I think, by now. Didn't have my best year before, but definitely going to use, fantasy life a little bit more now moving forward as to win me some money and help give me some bragging rights over family and friends.
Yeah, in my one league, I literally started off 0-6 and then won 6 straight, but I couldn't make it into the playoffs. It wasn't enough. Yeah, close, but
Good
no
run.
cigar.
You sound like the Steelers. You sound like what the Steelers do every damn year.
Yeah, pretty much. They bait you in, and change needs to happen. I kind of put myself out there too. Like, I'm kind of over this whole Kenny Pickett experience. I mean, I look at you, and I know this is the end of the episode, but I just kind of want to touch on it real quick before we get out of here. Is that you got to look at these other AFC quarterbacks, Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and then we're just going to roll into the season with Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett. It just simply, if you want to be, taken serious in this league, and I'm talking about on the field performance, can't do it. Go call Kirk Cousins.
I would go out and try Kirk Cousins. I would try Geno Smith. I don't know if the Seahawks want to move on from him. He's had a couple good years. I would still
winner.
try Justin Fields. There are guys out there who would create a non-competition scenario. And like I said before, if you have 2 quarterbacks, generally you have no quarterback. My guess right now is I think, I was on Justin Fields' train a little bit earlier, but I think it'll be Mason and Kenny back fighting for that spot. But so much time to go, and we're going to, like you said, be breaking it down left and right each week right here on the Sick Podcast Steelers. Crazy. All right, for Ian, for Jordan, I'm Mike, Steel City Wheelhouse, Stoney's Beard, DraftKings. We thank all of them greatly, and we will see you later in the week. Draft stuff coming very, very soon. Just wrote my first mock draft for BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Check that out and find me on Twitter. Find that on Twitter at MikeDubSports1. He's at JYorkFootball, and we will see you next time.
And there's no off season. See you there.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Steelers Crazy on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.